And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to start off, I mentioned right in the beginning that you were recommended for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. Can you just tell me and the audience, what was this all about?
Glad to. And let me point out that the editor of the Defense and Intelligence Journal in Norway recommended me in an article in which he said the Nobel Peace Prize was shit. So let's have a little context there. He had a very long, powerful critique of the Nobel Peace Prize, which has been politicized and diminished. I mean, they give it to war criminals now. So me being recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize might sound nice. It's absolutely not going to happen. But the reason I was recommended was because I migrated from open source intelligence to open source everything engineering. And working with guys like Dr. Marcin Jakubowski, who's the creator of the Global Village construction set, we've documented that you can lift the 5 billion poor at 10% of the cost of the prevailing Western model. A John Deere tractor, for example, costs $250,000 and has secret software that it won't allow the farmers to repair. So they extort money from the farmers for every repair. There's actually lawsuits about right to repair. An open source tractor with exactly the same functionality, which can be repaired in the field by the farmer, is $25,000, 10%. So we're at the tail end of a Western industrial financial system that has basically taken 90% of the cost into legal and banking fees. And the 10% that it actually costs to do stuff is lost sight of. So that's why I was recommended, because I can literally bring the whole world up at 10% of the cost of the Western paradigm. And Putin now is talking about a post-Western economy. China is talking about a post-Western economy. They have not grasped the concept of open source everything engineering yet. If we did it right, every university would have an open source innovation lab, and we would have all 9 by 27 of the open sources. It's not just software and hardware. It's also provisioning, which includes open source energy, open source water desalination, open source food. So there's 9 major categories of open source. Each one has 3 subcategories. There are many, many more. Bottom line, we can do it, but and we can solve all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals within 10 to 20 years at 10% of the cost of the prevailing Western model. That's why I was recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize.
The reason why people or countries or corporations aren't embracing the open source, what happens with patents and things like that? I mean, do they lose all that? Is that the problem?
It's a really good question. It's a very, very important question. Here's the bottom line, and Bill Binney's a friend of mine, and if you haven't interviewed him, I can certainly connect you. Binney is to NSA as I am to CIA. Machiavelli said it best. You know, the old system, everyone who's invested in the old system has everything to lose from a new system and nothing to gain from abandoning the old system. You know, our president, Donald Trump, has said it well. The system is rigged. Not only our political system, but our banking system, our legal system. I mean, I love Matt Taibbi. He's written 2 enormously important books. One was called Griftopia, in which he talks about the merger between political and financial crime, particularly in the United States, but also in the United Kingdom and everywhere else. And then his second book was called The Divide, how we have one legal system for the rich and one legal system for the poor. So there's a 1% legal system where Jeffrey Epstein can get away with pedophilia, run amok, and tunnels and video channels, 16 video channels. He had 16 separate video channels into the caves under his island where there were different kinds of pedophilia going on. And he just spent $20 million burying all of that. And then you have the justice system for the poor. Let me tell you, the justice system for the poor, I'm the chief counsel for the Judicial Commission of Review on human trafficking and child sex abuse. So one of the things we've learned is that the legal system for the poor is optimized to literally harvest children, to monetize children into adoption schemes that are kept secret so that the pedophiles that buy the children are protected. And it's also designed to harvest estates from the elderly. Elderly people across America are being put into wards of the state in a very malicious, deliberate fashion that often includes drugging them so that the state can then, or the individuals within the state, specific judges, specific prosecutors, specific lawyers that look for these victims, and they literally turn them into a ward of the state, and then they suck out their estate and then let them die under state care. So this legal system for the poor is actually a legal system against the poor, not for the poor. And I think Tavi has rendered a very important work there, and I think you will see much, much more about this, to include, I believe, that Grant Thornton, which is a Rothschild company, and all of these other auditing firms, they're all going to be taken down in the next 5 to 6 years, because all of them are corrupt to the bone, basically rubber stamping high crimes at the highest possible level.
I wanted to switch topics to Judge Kavanaugh, because this is in the news today, and we can see that, there's allegations against him. We see it's all over the mainstream media. I wanted to get your take on what's really happening with Judge Kavanaugh.
Well, let me first tell your listeners that we have 40 updates on our Judge Kavanaugh post at phi-beta-iota.net. And the tiny URL is bothright-move on. Bothright-move on. Here's the bottom line. I'm a former clandestine services case officer. I've worked with a program manager for CIA mind control. I'm very familiar with the way in which CIA and the Mossad have been basically using child prostitutes and using mind control against people and so forth. Bottom line here is that Judge Kavanaugh is guilty of lies of omission. It's quite clear that he drank heavily, that he did underage drinking, and that he occasionally blacked out. So he lied to Congress by omission. I'm not sure you can actually say that he's done a lie that disqualifies him from being a judge on the Supreme Court. I have reservations about Judge Kavanaugh because of his Patriot Act and his legalizing torture and several other things. However, the manner in which he has been treated has swung me completely over to his side in terms of let's confirm him and move on. Blasey is a whole bag of worms. She has been caught in multiple lies, all of which have been documented at this tinyurl.com/bothright-move on. She is lying about all of the details, and she is particularly lying about whether Kavanaugh was ever involved. The polygraph examination that they talk about never ever mentioned Judge Kavanaugh. That polygraph is also something she is specialized at defeating. She's actually got a track record as a psychologist, and she lied about being a research psychologist, and they were very quick to clean up her Stanford website. Stanford and Yale, by the way, are the two ends of the evil empire in terms of universities supporting the darkest side of the CIA. Okay, Yale was into mind control and Nazi experiments from day one. And Stanford is the other end of that axis of evil, of universities doing the darkest things for the CIA and the Pentagon. Cats. Let me say I give Senator Feinstein a clean bill of health. I don't believe Senator Feinstein leaked the memo. What we have since learned is that Katz, the lawyer, almost certainly is the one who leaked the memo, and she also did not tell Blasey that Blasey had privacy options. The committee bent over backwards to give Blasey the option of being interviewed in California by members of the committee and staff, and Katz, who I believe should lose her law license, Katz did not communicate these options to Blasey. Now, it goes further. George Soros funded a hit job on Kavanaugh that mobilized someone called Ricky Seidman, a female who was an advisor to Anita Hill. In June of this year, Ricky Seidman was mobilized to develop Blasey as a hit job on Kavanaugh. Katz was then brought in, and I believe that Katz works for Chuck Schumer. Okay, not Feinstein. If I were to wave a magic wand today and say, here's where the blame goes, I would bless Senator Feinstein for protecting Blasey as Blasey wished to be protected, and I would nail Katz to the wall with an FBI investigation she can't escape. I think Katz is the evildoer here. who literally working for Soros and working for Senator Chuck Schumer, who is on record as saying he'll do whatever it takes to defeat Kavanaugh. I think Katz is the eye of the storm, and the FBI should be investigating Katz to include all of her emails and all of her cell phones, which, of course, we do have in the NSA database. From where I sit, Kavanaugh is just as qualified as Gorsuch was, and the difference is not Kavanaugh. The difference is the Democrats decided to do a total political assassination on Kavanaugh, having let Gorsuch slide. Okay, so the real difference here is the degree to which Chuck Schumer, Senator Chuck Schumer, who represents Israel, by the way, not the United States of America, Chuck Schumer decided to take Kavanaugh out at any cost. And Katz was his instrument. And I hope that's the story the American people will understand one of these days.
Now, does Deborah Katz, does she have any connection to Clinton?
She is Hillary Clinton's lover, lawyer, and fundraiser. And when I say lover, I say in the sense that she loves Hillary Clinton. If I had her under interview on a stand, I would be asking her, have you ever kissed Hillary Clinton? Have you ever fondled Hillary Clinton? Discovery is a lot of fun once you get into it. Bottom line, Katz is dirty, dirty, dirty.
So what is the real reason where they're going after Kavanaugh? Why are they pushing so hard? What is the whole purpose of this? Is it they just don't like him?
You've asked the question in a way no one else has. Let me tell you, this is not about Roe v. Wade. This is not about Roe v. Wade. This is about military tribunals. Katz became a target with a bullseye on his forehead when Senator Lindsey Graham had that exchange with him, which is one of the most popular pieces. I had it pulled out. Lindsey Graham, who, by the way, if you want to really understand something, John McCain was executed and Lindsey Graham was pardoned. Okay? John Kasich is on CNN saying McCain was executed. All right? Bottom line, McCain is dead. Lindsey Graham is now the apple of Donald Trump's eye.
Well, let me go back here. You said McCain was executed. Why was he executed? That's
what John Kasich has said on national television. McCain sold out to the Saudis, to the Israelis, to a whole bunch of other people. Okay. McCain sold out on the POWs, the POWs. McCain supported Hillary Clinton in selling Syria and Yemen to Saudi Arabia, and selling Libya to the French, and selling Uranium One to Russia. McCain and Clinton were actually much, much closer than people realize. He was essentially a traitor to the United States of America at multiple levels across decades. Lindsey Graham has had his issues. But if you look at Lindsey Graham carefully right now, you will see that he has made his peace with Donald Trump. And he is now rendering a vital service to the nation, and God bless him. I think of people as born again. In my humble opinion, Lindsey Graham has been born again. All is forgiven. He is now serving the Republic in a very, very important way. And the reason Kavanaugh is being taken down is because the deep state, which relies heavily on the Democrats, is terrified of military tribunals. We are still in a state of war. Technically, the United States is in a state of war. Technically, and this is why people should go look at the 3-minute exchange between Lindsey Graham and Kavanaugh.
That we've been at war, and it's called the war on terrorism. Do you generally agree with that concept?
I do, Senator, because Congress passed the authorization for use of military force, which is still in effect. And that was passed, of course, on September 14th, 2001, 3 days later.
Let's talk about the law in war. Is there a body of law called the law of armed conflict?
There is such a body, Senator.
Is there a body of law that's called basic criminal law?
Yes, Senator.
Are there differences between those two bodies of law?
Yes, Senator.
From an American citizen's point of view, do your constitutional rights follow you? If you're in Paris, does the Fourth Amendment protect you as an American from your own government?
From your own government, yes.
Okay. So, if you're in Afghanistan, do your constitutional rights protect you against your own government?
If you're an American in Afghanistan, you have constitutional rights as against the U.S. government.
Is there a long-standing...
That's long settled law.
Isn't there also a long-settled law that it goes back to the Eisentrager case? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, Johnson versus Eisentrager.
Right. That American citizens who collaborate with the enemy have considered enemy combatants.
They can be. They can be. They're sometimes criminally prosecuted, sometimes treated in the military.
Well, let's talk about can be. I think
under Supreme Court precedent.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a Supreme Court decision that said that American citizens who collaborated with Nazi saboteurs were tried by the military. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think a couple of them were executed.
Yeah.
So if anybody doubts, there's a long-standing history in this country that your constitutional rights follow you wherever you go, but you don't have a constitutional right to turn on your own government, collaborate with the enemy of the nation. You'll be treated differently. What's the name of the case, if you can recall, that reaffirmed the concept that you could hold one of our own as an enemy combatant if they were engaged in terrorist activities in Afghanistan? Are you familiar with that case?
Yeah, Hamdi.
Okay. So the bottom line is, I want every American citizen to know you have constitutional rights, but you do not have a constitutional right to collaborate with the enemy. There's a body of law well developed long before 9/11 that understood the difference between basic criminal law and the law of armed conflict. Do you understand those differences?
I do understand that there are different bodies of law, of course, Senator.
Okay. If you're
It is legal right now for military tribunals to take anyone who is considered an agent of a foreign power and try them under a military tribunal rather than in a U.S. court of law. I think that is the bottom line. Kavanaugh is about helping Trump take down the deep state. I think Roe v. Wade is settled law. And I don't think Roe v. Wade is something we want to fight about, particularly as Donald Trump tries to unify the nation over the next 6 years. So for me, I think you've asked a very important question. I think the answer is because Kavanaugh will be the swing vote on military tribunals.
Do they need Kavanaugh confirmed for the declassification of FISA, the 302s, and the text messages?
No, absolutely not. In fact, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are digging their grave ever deeper. The Democrats completely violated the separation of powers in telling state and FBI to not release anything. They're totally wrong. The president has all of the authority he needs to mandate the declassification without a single redaction. What the redaction is going to do is fry Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, as well as Loretta Lynch. Once you get all those redactions out of there, I am absolutely certain you can actually create a case for retrospective impeachment of Barack Obama.
So, I mean, if you have a retrospective impeachment of Obama...
I wouldn't do that. I'm saying, hypothetically speaking.
Well, let's say that does happen. Let's say, a lot of let's say the birth certificate thing is true and everything else comes out and they, say that wasn't really valid as a president. What happens to all the laws and everything that he's done, in the last 8 years that he was president?
You're asking a brilliant question, which can go even further back to Bush and Cheney. I've published a series of memorandums for the president that was delivered to the White House. It's available free online at tinyurl/911-POTUS, P-O-T-U-S. And the bottom line on 9/11 is that it was commercial insurance fraud dressed up as terrorism. We knew, and I'll just give you one sentence on this since this may not be on your agenda, but we knew in 1988, 1989 that the Twin Towers were condemned. And Governor Pataki in New York and his counterpart in New Jersey made a deliberate decision to collaborate with Bush Cheney to plan for a future controlled demolition dressed up as terrorism that was forbidden by the EPA because of the asbestos and all the toxic chemicals and so forth. So people can read the 28 memorandums at tinyurl.com/911-POTUS, P-O-T-U-S. And I'll leave it at that. But what I want to say to you is essentially, we've been going back as far as Ronald Reagan. We've been in a state of unlaw. We've been in a state where executive power and the use of the continuity of government, the super secret program within the intelligence community, Dick Cheney basically created a shadow government using continuity of government, a super secret program, which I've been affiliated with in a very indirect way. And he's basically been doing things illegally off the books. And so it's not just Barack Obama. It's also the two Bushes and Dick Cheney.
What you're saying here, if this comes out and the declassification happens and, they point the finger at Clinton and Obama, how is the country going to react to this? I mean, a lot of people are sleeping. A lot of people don't realize that this is happening. I mean, how is the country going to react to something like this? I mean, do you see like a civil war? Or do you see riots?
I don't see a civil war. And I have to tell you, I was very concerned at one point that George Soros might succeed with his #resist movement. And they were seeking to create violence in the streets the summer after Trump was inaugurated. It failed completely. I mean, he could not even get paid black protesters to show up. Okay? It failed completely. My best guess, and this is why I've been a proponent of throwing the press out of the White House and creating a Trump studio and having Trump do fireside chats every day and also bringing in the assistant secretaries and a whole bunch of other people. Because right now, America is badly educated and it cannot glean an education from the mainstream media. And those alternative channels like yours and Mike Adams, Natural News, and so forth, even Alex Jones, although you can hardly compare the two, they're being repressed. They're being digitally assassinated. So I believe that we need a national YouTube or BitChute educational program for the country. And we have to have a truth channel. And that's why two billionaires have come to me and said, what will it take to create a truth channel? That's $200 million. So we may see a truth channel sometime in the next year that will be built around BitChute and code mail. It will basically replace every element of Google Gestapo, including Meetup.com. Meetup.com works for the Anti-Defamation League and has eliminated conservative meetups at the same time that it's waived fees for 1,087 #resist groups. So bottom line here is we need a whole new internet. Tim Berners-Lee is still stuck in the URL age. We're talking about a world brain. We're talking about where you do own your own information and your information is encrypted and you decide to have access. Like I love Cisco's application-oriented network, where you could create rules for your information down to the nano data level. And you could say, okay, today the Chinese can see this and tomorrow they can't. Or today only people who live in New Jersey and have a badge can see this. So there's a lot of sophistication that has been kept out of the internet. There's a lot of good code that has been kept out of the internet. The internet is like science. It's reductionist crap. It still doesn't provide the tools for sense making. I mean, I love, I think it was Micah Sifry that wrote a book, The Big Disconnect, How the Internet is Still Broken. He's absolutely right. The internet is not designed to empower the public. It's not designed to protect the public, and it's not designed to help achieve direct democracy. So what these two billionaires are talking to me about is something that goes to direct democracy. And let me just end by making a point. Not only is Trump being screwed by Twitter, they've dropped him down to 40% of his previous reach, but he's not using polling well. When my friend John McAfee does a poll, he gets back 47,000 answers. So Trump could literally be doing direct national ballot access. Should we leave NATO? Should we throw the UN out of New York? Should we close all our military bases overseas? There are so many things where Trump could be getting power from the public just by bringing the issue up. So I'm very, very excited about the possibilities. And by the way, if I did have a truth channel, alternative media channels like yours would literally be pride of place on a dashboard. You would have your own icon, and we would be weighting you and giving you the kind of multi-million person access that you deserve.
Well, thank you very much. You mentioned the term hashtag Google Gestapo, and you coined this phrase a while back. And since, you coined the phrase, we're seeing, and you mentioned this just before, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit. They're shutting down many different channels one at a time, many at once.
WordPress.com shut down Fellowship of the Minds over Sandy Hook. Okay? And you can't even mention SH word anymore, or the ADL will shut you down in YouTube. So for those who want to read the memorandums that the president received and the Secretary of Homeland Security, they can go to tinyurl.com/sh-POTUS. Okay? I've asked 161 questions. I've made no assertions. I've asked 161 questions based on the memos from a whole bunch of other people. So bottom line here is that Cynthia McKinney and she wears a white shirt with hashtag unrig. She's the black alt-left woman, former political congresswoman. I am the alt-right white guy, former spy, Nobel Prize, Peace Prize nomination, so forth. We came together and we were pressing for hashtag unrig Election Reform Act. And one of the things I did to honor Cynthia was put up a plan for a billboard that would force every congressman to choose between the United States and Israel. And that immediately attracted the ADL. I speculate that we are in the top 10 of the ADL hit list. Okay? I'm trying to work my way to number 1 over the next few years. What they did, they killed us 6 ways in 90 days. We had a $500,000 program. They killed us 6 ways in 90 days. They created a media hit job on sex slaves on Mars. That's David Brock and Media Matters. That was after a 2-hour interview on pedophilia with Alex Jones, which they did not want anyone to pay attention to, because I will tell you there are a lot of people that are going to be taken down for pedophilia in the United States over the next 6 years. A lot. Elites. Not just movie stars, but judges, prosecutors, governors, vice presidents. Okay? Joe Biden is on a list. That's why he's not viable for 2020. If he runs in 2020, the pedophilia monster is going to come up and eat him, which is why Elizabeth Warren is feeling very comfortable that she might have a run at it. But they did a media hit job. They had a 90-day defamation campaign that included a conspiracy of 400 people writing to PayPal and to Indiegogo, trying to cut off our shutting thing. They had trolls report us as a pornographic website to Kaspersky and Norton, and I was able to get that fixed. They had Meetup cancel our $77,000 paid professional program. We were paying $77,000, and Meetup canceled 435 professional meetups in each of 435 congressional districts at the same time that they were waiving fees for 1,087 folks. And then there were a couple of other things. And so I wrote an article, which people can find at tinyurl.com/Google Gestapo. That's when I started to notice that all of these folks, including Reddit and even PayPal now, PayPal just canceled Alex Jones. PayPal canceled WikiLeaks prior, okay? So we can't rely on any of these people to honor the First Amendment or even to honor Title VII. Title VII is the anti-discrimination law, okay? These people are all in violation of Title VII. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. Let me stop and turn control back over to you.
No, that's fine. But let me just ask you this. We see them continually bringing down channels, accounts, and they're trying to censor as many people as possible. Is there going to come a point where the people are going to say enough is enough? Already I think Trump is setting up a meeting with these tech companies to discuss, what they're doing and what's happening here. Are they a little nervous about this?
I think they're arrogant. I think that they're making a serious mistake. I have 2 CTOs, virtual CTOs. One of them is Stephen E. Arnold, who wrote the book on Google back in the 90s. He's now written the book on Amazon. These people are absolutely convinced they can't be replaced, but they don't understand that they are so deep into legacy data centers that the next big thing is going to bury them. Now, the single best idea I've heard so far is to, and please don't laugh because I know they have issues, but the single best idea I've heard is to have the president order the U.S. Post Office to provide every citizen with free email and a complete spectrum of social media town hall services. Make this a national program that is free to everybody.
Would this be controlled by the government then?
No, it's a really good question that you raise. And one of the things I told the billionaires is that I wanted to have a national legal summit to bury Google Gestapo in massive class action lawsuits. And I also want to have a national technical summit to talk about how you can create this without having the government control it. One of my favorite people in all the world is Kalia Young. She's known as Identity Woman. And she taught me years ago about the inalienable rights of anonymity, identity, privacy, and security. And I'm proud to call John McAfee my friend. And I have several other world-class blockchain people who are in my little orbit and waiting to be mobilized. So what we're looking at is use the post office, which, by the way, the post office is also an option for killing all the cell towers. The post office has an office in every neighborhood, and you could literally start creating a mesh network out of that. So there are a lot of different things that could move forward. The bottom line here is that information is like air, and we should not be allowing Google Gestapo to censor, manipulate, and digitally assassinate information. And that's what they're doing.
I wanted to go back to, you mentioned Sandy Hook, false flags, 9/11, and I wanted to get your take on why the deep state uses false flags. Why do they need to push these type of events? What's the whole purpose of these?
I mean, let's start with the fact that I ran a false flag for CIA. I've said that as a matter of record, okay? Now, for those of you viewers that are not familiar with the term, false flag originated in maritime warfare, where a pirate or another nation, like the Spanish coming up on a French ship, they would fly the flag of their enemy until they got close enough to surprise them and then hopefully defeat them. So false flag means nothing more or less than taking an action that is disguised as if someone else were doing it. And I have a Kindle book that is called False Flags, Tools of the Deep State. And the pieces of the Kindle book are all free online at phibetaiota.net. And by the way, I just spent $2,000 backing myself up out of everything that could interfere with phibetaiota.net to include Iceland. So bottom line is I cannot be shut down. But I had to take that precaution because WordPress and Google Blog just shut down a very important website. All of these people are acting outside the boundaries of law and common respect for free speech. So it's very important. Now, going back to false flag. Essentially, I think that the 1% have realized that keeping the 99% in a constant state of fear is a good thing. Barack Obama made it possible to legally lie to the American public when he undermined, I think it's this, I forget the exact name of the act, but there's an act that stood for a long time that said you are not allowed to lie to the American public and propagandize the American public. And he changed that act, so now it's legal. There are also a number of other areas where I think President Trump is going to be able to come out with a very powerful program that says you are no longer allowed to lie to the public. In fact, national security warrants are out there, where, for example, the cops who are lying to the public about Sandy Hook are doing so under a national security warrant that says you are indemnified from any consequences for lying because it's in our national security interest for Sandy Hook to not be discovered to be a false flag. Okay? I mean, Amazon is banning books that attempt to discuss Sandy Hook. And that's why I took all my reviews away from Amazon. I was the top Amazon reviewer for nonfiction. Over 2,500 reviews in 98 categories. I took them all off of Amazon. They can now be seen free online at phibetaiota.net. So false flags are a way of pursuing the anti-gun agenda. They're a way of legitimizing the mass surveillance police state, which is, I am appalled. We had 80,000 SWAT attacks last year in the United States of America, and many of them were at the wrong address. We're killing people with SWAT teams that are treating the public like cockroaches. That's actually a term that's being used in Israeli training of U.S. cops. These people are cockroaches. You have to stamp them out. Okay, this is absolutely outrageous. It used to be, I had an uncle who was a Nassau County cop back when cops put their lives on the line for the public. And when my uncle was a Nassau County cop in New York, he understood that given a choice between taking a bullet and killing an innocent civilian, he took the bullet. That's what community-focused law enforcement is supposed to be about. So we've lost it in this country completely. Sandy Hook for me and Orlando are places where the public can learn. I believe it's essential that we challenge. I actually think Alex Jones has been bought off. Alex Jones could win the Sandy Hook lawsuits if he had the balls to go the distance. But my sense is he's being bought off, and he's going to take a fall on Sandy Hook to deepen the legitimacy of what I believe is a false flag event. The FBI is on record as saying no one died in Newtown in 2012. Okay, and I'm really very impressed by the memorandums that were submitted to me. I modified it in my letter of transmittal to President Trump, who got the volume on the 8th of September. I wasn't comfortable with the absolute assertions in all of the memorandums, so I modified it to turn it around into 161 questions. And you've got former state trooper Walter Halbig, who's an absolute patriotic American former state trooper. He knows what he's talking about when he says these state troopers are lying. And I absolutely guarantee you, you give me these state troopers in handcuffs and I will get them to tell the truth in a kind and gentle way using my military interrogation translator teams. Also, I think President Trump needs to give each of these state troopers a written presidential memorandum that gives them a combination of a pardon and a presidential order. I will pardon you for your previous lies, provided you tell the truth from this point on. I am overturning any national security warrant you may be operating under. You are no longer authorized to lie to the public. If President Trump does that and we have a Sandy Hook conference, it is going to blow this country up in a positive way.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to talk, since we're talking about false flags, there was like letters that were mailed to Mattis, Trump in the Pentagon. I think it was the Pentagon post office, not actually inside the building. Do you think that this was a message to them from the deep state?
Let me explore that with some nuances. Going back to the anthrax attacks on Congress, those were shadow government attacks. In other words, we did it to ourselves. Okay. Going back to 9/11, the explosives in the Pentagon were planted by Pentagon employees. Barbara Honegger, who was a special assistant to the beloved Ronald Reagan, has done a wonderful memo on how the whole Pentagon explosive thing was an inside job. Okay, the holes that were blown in the walls were blown outwards, not inwards. There was no debris. I've cleaned up after aircraft accidents, and you have body parts and luggage and seats everywhere. Okay. There was one airplane that was blown up on the helicopter landing site. It was provided there by the Pentagon to be blown up. So I would say to you that with absolutely no knowledge of all of the specifics, if I were to be giving my investigators guidance right now on those three envelopes, I would say start with the premise that this was an inside job, that the shadow government is seeking to cause alarm. Now, I believe President Trump, for all of his warts, and like me, like all of us, maybe not you, but he has warts. Okay? But he is a gift to this nation because he is not part of the deep state. And this New York Times attack on him from his dad channeling money and trying to avoid taxes and all of this stuff, these people are desperate. They're trying to do everything they can to take Donald Trump down precisely because he is not their boy, the way Hillary Clinton would have been their girl. Okay? I think America's at a turning point in its history. I've reviewed a number of books on information pathologies, and there's one particularly called The Cheating Culture. America has become a cheating culture. Everyone is cutting corners. I've got bronchitis, and Giant Pharmacy couldn't give me the Z-Pack because the new pharmacy company that they've got supplying drugs is cheating. They're basically saying, no, we can't give you Z-Pack. You have to take this lesser generic. Well, I will tell you for a fact, this lesser generic is not doing the job. I'm going to have to go get another prescription and go to CVS for my Z-Pack. People are cutting corners everywhere, and it's killing the nation. We've lost our integrity. So from where I sit, Trump has really taken a beating, in part because all of the economic things that he's done have not been properly promulgated to the public. There's no comparison between NBC and CNN. I mean, NBC is a vaster, bigger, better network. But they're not doing the job. They're not promulgating what is it that has changed and been improved. The economy is getting better. There are fewer immigrants. We're bringing companies back. We're trying to elevate people to $15 and more. I mean, Amazon is a predatory company. When Amazon raises the minimum wage to $15, something important has happened. Okay? This is really good news for America. Now, you still can't get by in this country for less than $50,000 by and large. So people are still having to do 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and so forth. So let me stop talking and come back to you. I think the envelopes were an inside job. That's my bottom line.
And do you think this is a message to Trump and those? I mean, why would they do this? What would be the purpose of it?
There's no explaining. I'm really uncomfortable trying to speculate. I think the other thing that I'll say is that I learned long ago when I was overseas and I was working with drugs and money laundering and all of this stuff. There's no such thing as one U.S. government. There is no monolithic U.S. government. In fact, I've written a very popular post called The 7 CIAs. And I outline how there's a White House CIA, a Wall Street CIA, a Saudi CIA, an Israeli CIA, there's a drone CIA, and then there's kind of the normal CIA, which is all the people that work out of cubicles and pretend that they're doing something useful, which they're not. Okay, CIA is largely worthless. I still love CIA, actually. I want to resurrect it, but not in its present form. Bill Binney and I have agreed that CIA, NSA, and all the other pieces, we can cut 70% of them. And then we consolidate all of them into a single consolidated central intelligence agency that has a SIGINT directorate and an imagery directorate and so forth. And then we have the open source agency over here, which is what I've been doing the last 30 years, against strong CIA opposition. They actually spiked stories about me in Time and AP. The last thing they want me to become known is known. And it's the alternative media that brought 2 billionaires to my door. So God bless you, alternative media. You've actually given me a voice, which is wonderful. So what I'm trying to say to you is that there are people within the deep state and the shadow government who will go off the reservation and do stuff because they think it helps. You also have secret societies. You have the Freemasons, the Knights of Malta, and Opus Dei. Those are the big 3. And then you have the Zionist Zionim, which is 90% good people who think they're being good to Judaism and 10% absolute core evil who believe that we're all shiksas who can be screwed and thrown aside and do anything, okay? So what I'm saying is that there are elements, there are stovepipes within the U.S. government. This ricin thing needs to be properly investigated. And one of the problems with the FBI is it's a theatrical agency. People forget the FBI was founded by a pedophile. Okay? J. Edgar Hoover took small children from the mafia as gifts. I think it was small boys was his preference. Okay? So let me just make a point. I believe ever since J. Edgar Hoover created the FBI, there have been there's a stovepipe of pedophiles all the way up to the most highest rank in the FBI. Just like there's a stovepipe of Freemasons. Just like there's a stovepipe of Opus Dei and Knights of Malta. So that at the end of the day, the FBI has 4 chains of command, not 1. Am I explaining this concept?
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, the FBI needs a complete root canal makeover. And you won't get there unless the president decides, and I think he would do this in his second term. In Donald Trump's second term, my hope is he will close all of our military bases overseas, leave NATO, throw the UN out of New York, and clean up the government. And that will include an end to federal income tax. All taxes should be collected at the state and local level. The federal government should present a balanced budget to the states, and the senators should represent the states, not the mob. And then that money should be a portion of the federal government only for those things that the federal government can do on behalf of all states. Law enforcement needs to be returned to the states.
Do you think there's going to be military tribunals? Graham brought this up when he was interviewing Kavanaugh. We mentioned this already. Do you think this is actually going to happen?
The short answer is yes, based on what I've seen. I am not in favor of Guantanamo. I think we should have given Guantanamo back to the Cubans. Guantanamo has had a multi-million-dollar facelift. It's got an entire battalion of military police that was put in a couple of months ago. Guantanamo has been taken from being a terrorist dump to being a Marriott courtyard for elite traders. And so my gut feeling is that, yes, we are going to see some military tribunals. Now, there's some question as to whether all of the sealed indictments actually exist or not. I'm inclined to believe that they do exist, but that most of them will not be acted on. If you've got 10 to 30,000 people that comprise the deep state, and you can inform 25,000 of them that there's a sealed indictment that will not be opened if they shut up and stay out of the way, you've just gained huge leverage over the last 1,000 or so, who is really the nut here, okay? I still hold out great hope for America the Beautiful, and I hope I haven't gone on and talked too long in response to your questions, because I think you've asked really good questions. America the Beautiful is one word away from being America the Great, and that word is integrity. We lack integrity at the highest levels across the board. That's what I want to put back in, and that's why #unrig is so important. Donald Trump is making a fundamental mistake in not pushing election reform, because if he pushed the Election Reform Act, he would mobilize the independents, the libertarians, the Greens, justice, working families, which came out of Acorn, but we'll let them have that. Okay? There is every reason to bring the American people back into the American government, and that's Donald Trump's one big failure in his first 2 years. He has not offered a fair deal to every American so that the last 2 years of this term can include all Americans having a voice in